Here I've got the Polyend Play Plus. It's the upgraded version of the Polyend Play, obviously, and this brings us 4 synth engines, stereo sampling, and audio over USB, as well as a few extra little additions like a piano roll editor and export of stems. And it looks almost exactly the same as the original. The only visible difference here is the plus sign on the logo, but it's got a more powerful chip, which is why we've got those extra functions in here. But the release of this didn't come without some controversy. Price was reduced for the original versions. Here it is in Tommen for £433, and here's the Play Plus at £695. And if you do fancy getting either of them, please check out the links in the description below. Affiliate links, same price to you, but I get a little tip, which is massively appreciated. And if you do have an original, you can get your unit upgraded to the new spec for $399 plus postage. But of course, if you just bought the Play at the full price, then the Play Plus came out, it cost you an additional $400 to get yours up to the Play Plus spec, which was the same price you just paid for the Play. So if you'd have just held on a couple of weeks later, you'd have got the full thing for a lot less, which is why I think the controversy happened. But they're not discontinuing the Play. Here's a comment from Polyend on their forum. So now you have the choice between the Play and the Play Plus, which is what this video is about really. Do you want the Play Plus, or the synth engines worth the extra cash? And I made this little track last year with the original. Most demos had focused on the randomization and fill options on the sequencer in conjunction with the sample playback and all those rather cool performance effects. But I needed an external synth to make the track, so the Play worked as a central sequencer for a doorless setup, which may well suit you just fine, but you do need other kit to produce the finished track if you're not relying solely on samples. So the original isn't a self-sufficient standalone instrument if you want to use synth tones and tweak them. Obviously, if you just want to use samples, it's fine, but Polyend Play Plus it's got the synth engines in here. So this video is about what do they sound like, are they worth it, how do you use them, and is this generally worth the extra cash? Okay, like I said, we've got 4 synth engines in here, and none of them are based on anything in particular, but have been designed to give a wide variety of sonic textures without being too complex to program. If we go into the main menu, and we come down to synths, we can see we've got 3 synth slots per project, and each of those slots could have one of 4 different synth models. So the ACD, this is a bit like an SH101. It's got a single oscillator, but we add the different waveforms like a sawtooth, a square, and a sub. And then we've got, I'll go into all these in more detail in a minute, but I'm just showing you basically what we've got here. We've got this FAT, let's go back into there. The FAT, and this has got 3 oscillators that are detuned for these big super saw and super square type sounds. Then we've got VAP. Imagine a cut down Prophet 5 or Jupiter 8. So a fully featured 2 oscillator polysynth, but it hasn't got FM and a few more of the more complex features. But it's, you know, it's a decent little synth in itself. And then we've got the WTFM. So although the VAP doesn't have FM, we've actually got what the FM on its own. And it's a simple 2 operator FM synth, but you can get enough decent growls, bells and weirdness from it for it to be a really useful little synth. If we come back here, in each of these slots, we can have, as I've just showed, any of the synths. So if we come back, we could have, I don't know, any combination. So we could have VAP in all of them. Go in, VAP. Where is it? We've got VAP in all 3. And there's a limit of 8 synth voices in total between these 3 slots. So you set your maximum polyphony in here. We're going to the synth. Maximum, there's 1. Come back in synth 2. We've got 1 in synth 1. But we can change it to whatever we like. So we could change that. We've got 2 taken up by synth 2 and 3. So this will only go to 6 because we've already got 2 assigned. But if we assign that to, I don't know, let's touch one of those buttons there. Assign that to 2. Then we can go into synth 2 and give this more. Up to 5. So you've got 8 voices between the 3 different synths. So you can have maybe a lead with a single voice, a bass with a single voice, and a chord with 6 voices on it. You know, little combinations like that. But if we go to the MIDI sequencer page, come up perform. This is MIDI sequencer page. You can see I've got 2 tracks programmed in that little intro track. Now, some of these knobs have got different functions. We select the synth using the sample folder. So sample and then patch. I've not got to double click on this because I'm forever touching it twice. Select the patch. Sample and folder is now the device or the synth and the patch. And then we've got some macros here as well. This, and this are now macro knobs. So if you come into the filter cutoff, it says filter cutoff and resonance there, but that's just because it's been assigned that. If we go to the sample, attack and sample delay, it's called attack and the decay that release. So it's got similar parameters programmed into this patch. If we go to overdrive and bit depth, we've got the filter envelope amount and the oscillator mix. So if I play, change the oscillator mix, bring them both in, a little bit detuned. And if we come into the synth menu, so let's hit there, let's come back from there, and we come in to edit this patch. So just to show you where I am in the total menu system, main menu, into the synths, shows you which synth that you want to edit. We're going to edit synth 1. And then if we edit the patch, so we can load the patch, just set the polyphony and the gain and the panning, edit the patch, come down here all the way to the bottom, and we've got these macros. So if we come into the overdrive and depth, it's not called overdrive and depth because we've renamed it in here. It was the oscillator mix. So the knob is the bit depth knob. Whoops, I've clicked it again. Bit depth knob is now oscillator mix, and then you can rename these per patch. And you'll notice the synth parameters aren't labeled on the Play Plus. It just looks exactly like the Play. And that makes sense for the macros at least because you change them per patch. So come back into here. Let's go to a different knob. Let's go to attack, which would be this one. We can change the parameter. We can change any of those synth parameters using that knob. Sample start and sample end is different because this brings us the chord mode. Let's put a chord on there. And you'll only get the polyphony on those chords that you've set for that voice. So if we come back into the voice, polyphony is only on 2. So let's whack it up a bit. Oh, I can't because I need to reduce the polyphony on the others. So if I come back to synth 1 now, I can put 6 on. That's 6 notes playing on synth 1, so synth 2 could be a bass and synth 3 could be a lead. You get the idea, hopefully. And now the sequencer is still monophonic, so you can only have 1 note per step. But if you listen to what I've done here, if I just solo that, let's unmute it. That's actually playing a chord because I've split the chords into 3 separate notes. Just a little cheat there, I suppose. And you'll notice we've got different colours here. Synth 1 is purple, synth 2 is green, I think. Let's hit that, see what synth we're on there. Synth 3 is green, so let's put synth 2 on this one, and that should go yellow, although synth 2 is turned off. But yeah, 3 different colours for the 3 different synths. And you can still use this as a MIDI engine as well, so you can send that to the different jack or USB MIDI channels as well. So we can have the 3 synths, 8 notes, plus USB on top. But yet you're limited to 8 tracks or 8 notes of MIDI and synth at the same time. And something else that might be worth noting is that with the current firmware, this is 1.01, just double check, just to make sure I'm not talking nonsense. Settings, firmware 1.01. You can't use the performance effects on the MIDI sequencer or the synths. You can see we can't enter it there. If we go into the audio page, we can. But to get around that, we do have export of stems. So you can export a stem per pattern. So if I come back into the MIDI sequencer, this track here, let's just solo it. I can export that as a stem. Come into the menu, back, file, export, export the current pattern as stems, which is what I've done. If we go back into the audio sequencer, track 2 is a sample of that synth. So that's the export. If I play it, I can then go into the performance mode and you will hear it play to the very end because it is the sample. There you go. A little workaround if you want to use the sounds that you've created in the synths in the audio engine. But let's take a listen to the synths now. So let's go back into the MIDI page. Let's go into synth 1. To the synths. And let's change that to the ACD. Okay, load the patch. Now it just so happens I've made some of my own here. So SC sort. Let's just have a little play around. Show you what we've got in here. So we'll go into edit the patch. We've got something a bit like an SH101 in that we can mix and blend different wave shapes from the same oscillator. So let's put some square in. Let's take the saw out. Let's change the pulse width. So you get the idea, you go in, it's a bit like it reminds me a little bit of my Alpha Juno. Find the parameter, then change it. On this, we've got the oscillator with a saw, a square, and a sub. Sub's quite cool on this, actually. Let's just turn it up. If you look down here, we've got -1 octave, square, pulse, triangle. Get really nice big fat tones from this. Got an LFO in here, a filter. Let's have a look at the filter. We've got different types of filter. The RD3 is a bit more like Roland 3, which is Roland 3 pole, which is the TB303. Let me just look at some other patches I might have created for this. Sweeps. All the shapes together. Go back to that sweep. Let's have a listen to the different filters, just to give you an idea of the variability you've got in these. Quite cool, isn't it? Okay, then next up, we've got the fat. Now, as I said earlier, this has got 3 big detuned oscillators. Let's just pick that for now, the init patch. The init patches are a bit weird, actually, because they've got the cutoff down and they're really short. If I go to init, I suppose they're quite good for these little steppy things, maybe for the sequencer on this, but when you're just playing it as a synth. Let's go and load the patch. So, whoops, back. Patch. I have made some for this as well. So this is my initial version. So you start off maybe with just the sawtooth, then we add fatness. It's like adding extra waves, detuning them. Big and fat. Now we've got this brightness, which is cool. Sort of adds an octave or adds a sub. Yeah, big fat tones instantly. Timbre changes it from a sawtooth to a square. So instant big fat PWM patches. Take the brightness down. Cool. Noise, oscillator reset. We've got a filter as well, obviously. But luckily, I've created some patches here, which makes it easy to demo. Reso pad. Let's go a little octave higher. Nice, lovely pad sound from there. Let's change that to my Tom Sawyer. And again in here, I think we've got different filters. I preferred this one on the MG, which is like a Moog. And I should point out we've got different modulation options on each of these synth engines. So on this one, we've got an amp envelope and a filter envelope plus an LFO. And you can change the waveform on that LFO, etc. But there's no big sort of mod matrix on this one. If we go into the next one, if we go into the VAP, which is the one I described as like a 2-voice poly synth. Let's load one of my patches again. These are lovely, these things actually. Let's put this one on. Beautiful. Let's turn the polyphony up on this. Let's maybe put the chord mode on as well, just to make life easier for me. Oh, major ninth, minor ninth. All nice, these, aren't they? Come back into the synth itself, which is what we were looking at. Let's go and edit it. You can see we've got 2 oscillators. We blend between them, so mix between the oscillators there. We hit that. The 6 does that, Jupiter 8 does that, blends between them, the Rev 2, the Prophet 8, you know, that sort of thing. Pulse width of the different oscillators, detune. In fact, let's take that chord off for now. Fine detune. It just means that you get all those sort of classic, big, fat old analog tones. Filter again, different filter types. Amp envelope, envelope 1, envelope 2, so you've got 3 envelopes on this one, plus 2 LFOs, and then you've got lots of modulation routines. I think there's 8 in this, is there? Oh, 6. And again, back down to the macros. We just load some of the patches I've been playing with. This one's nice again with chords on, so let's put a chord on this. One thing I should say actually is, if you are programming your own tone, do make sure that none of the macros are active, because I spent ages doing a few of these and the macros were active on the step I was on. So I'd program these sounds and then the filter cutoff was completely different when I reloaded them, put them on another step. Just something to be aware of. So let's load another one. That's actually really nice to do that little Africa thing on, but I can't quite play it on this little keyboard here. This is lovely. So just showing on that you get those classic polysynth tones. But if you look through here, there's lots of different tones in here as starting points. Oh, that's mine again. Let's go back. So there's loads of starting points. So you don't have to go in, obviously, and edit these to the nth degree like I've been doing. I'm just really doing this to show you exactly what's in here. On the WTFM then, we've got an FM amount. We've got two operators, ratio 1 and ratio 2. They're basically the tuning of the two oscillators, the ratio of the tuning. Shape 1 and shape 2. Let's change shape of 1. Not listening to 1, let's listen to 2. So there we go. It's a sawtooth. So you can change the shape of them. That's going from like a sine to a triangle to a sawtooth. So modulate 1 with 2. So loads of nice FM stuff going on in there. You can change the feedback on that to get very noisy. Crackly, madness, lovely. Feedback on the individual operator. I'm showing it to its extremes here for effect. But if we just load in one I've made, so let's go back to just show you something really sort of like the simplest thing you can do on FM really. That's just one operator modulating the other operator. The amount of FM is being controlled by an envelope. Edit. Got a little bit of FM to start with. Let's turn that off. Wasn't too much anyway. So ratio of 1 to 2. So 1's at 50%. So let's raise it an octave. Put it back down again. Okay, and then leave the shapes as they are. I'll just come down here to show you that. We've got amp envelope, modulation envelope 1, modulation envelope 2. Got an LFO in there, LFO 2, and then modulation source, we're using envelope 2, destination is the FM, and the amount is 22%. So let's just reduce that down to 0. And this is really nice, actually, should have mentioned this earlier, about the way the parameters are controlled. As you get nearer 0, you get really, really fine control. So we're at 1/1000th of a percent there. Often you lose resolution when you come down this low on things. And up here we're changing by whole percentage points. Good, innit? Simple to use, if you know your FM, that is. Go back, let's just listen to some of the patches we've got in here. So great for effects. And bells, as you might expect. And metallic sounds. So I hope this has given a good overview of these 4 different synth engines, what they can do, the sort of sounds you can get out of them. So WTFM, nice, glassy sounds, metallic sounds, dirty, grungy FM tones. VAP, you get those really nice sort of 2 oscillator polysynth tones. Fat is just big, fat, juicy sort of super saw and super square. And ACD is, like I say, the SH101. And they can all be polyphonic or monophonic or whatever you like. So there you have it, the Play Plus. It's got some ingenious little synth engines that turns it into a more fully fledged instrument. It will be great when they upgrade it to version 1.5 and you'll be able to use the performance mode with the synth engines. Until then, sample the bits that you like and then play around with them. But all in all, it was the same price, or it is the same price as this was when this originally came out. So for the extra money, it's great. But it does mean that this is going a bit cheaper now. So if you can pick one of these up and you don't need the synth engines, fantastic. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, please think about subscribing, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon. I've got samples, I've got patches, I've got tutorials. And do take a look at my Starsky Car website. I've got patches, I've got samples to buy. There are some cheap ones there and some free ones. Nice if you could pick up a few of the cheaper ones. It does help to support the channel. Well, thanks for staying to the very end. I really hope you found that useful, and I will see you next time.